Ahoy! New World Update 2.02 is coming out today, and it comes with quite a few good fixes to the game and a few nice improvements. The first one is the performance change they already talked about, and this seems to be a pretty big deal in terms of how they're wording this. So basically, they are changing the way that shaders are loaded on the game client. They expect this to improve performance and reduce frame hitching and stuttering, but there will be a bit of a trade-off here as well. The game boot up time will be longer. So when you launch the game, the loading screen, the logo screen will be longer. They say up to a minute. It depends on if you're running the game on an SSD or an HDD. I would recommend putting it on an SSD for a variety of reasons anyways, because all the loading times in the games are shorter that way. So really not much of a reason not to do it unless you don't have an SSD. But yeah, generally they're hoping that this will improve performance, and they will monitor player feedback and telemetry on the client after this change to see if they can further optimize things. I have recorded a bunch of stuff on the old patch to see how the performance was in various areas, and I can directly compare that to the new patch once it drops, and then I can tell you more about at least how the performance changed on my system. They also fixed a lag detected error that affected quite a few servers, so if you've had one of those issues lately where you couldn't connect to a server all of a sudden, they're hoping that that will be fixed with this. There were a variety of combat changes. First of all, there was an issue that allowed players to end the recovery of splitting grenade on the blunderbuss early. This was the macro thing that David was talking about, so basically there will be a longer post delay now instead of an instant cancel, I'm guessing. They increased the amount of health players gain from the first 150 levels of Constitution. This is going to be very interesting because we have to see what impact that also has on higher levels of Constitution. Obviously, they will also have more health, so everyone will have more health, but lower levels will have comparatively more health in terms of Constitution. So really have to see what exactly the values are here. I've measured the old ones, and I will tell you more once we have the patch in regards to the new ones. 150 dex and 300 dex attribute perks were swapped, as they already announced, so this is going to be something that will significantly affect certain PvP playstyles, especially the melee dex half-strength brothers. The Detonate Hard Rune is no longer able to deal critical damage. They said they want to keep this a little bit more in line with other things. I still think the Empower that specifically is on this Hard Rune and not on others due to the sheath also needs to go. They reduced the Cyclone slow from 50 to 30%, and they also limited the number of targets that could be affected by the spear's leeching Cyclone from an infinite amount to maximum of 3. I don't really think this is a problem in any relevant situation. I think if you're fighting more than 3 mobs at once and you're somehow abusing this effect, then yeah, that probably wasn't very intended to begin with. In any PvP scenario, you're probably not going to be hitting more than 3 people at the same time in the vast majority of scenarios, so nothing will really change in those. In the scenario where you're completely overwhelmed, you should probably be going down anyway, so yeah, I'm completely fine with this. I thought they were going to limit it to 2 players actually, or 2 targets, so I think this is very lenient in that regard. They reworked the Sword's Achilles heel passive to instead be a rend. They're not specifying the values here. If this is actually a 1-to-1 translation from a 20% slow to a 20% rend, that would be pretty big. Not so much in PvP, because rends are not that massive there anymore since they're now affecting armor, but in PvE, where another rend is always a nice thing to have, and this would be especially useful for the Sandworm, where you want to have as much rend as possible. And then you have to keep in mind that the sword already has another rend with Whirling Blade since recently, another 15% rend on top of that. So 2 rends that are very easy to apply, consistent 35% rend uptime. That's getting close to the spear, only that is a lot more AoE in comparison to the spear. Very, very interesting change. For the Sandworm raid, they fixed an issue that caused players who died during the encounter to not receive rewards upon completion. I originally assumed that this was intended. People were saying this was because they don't want people to be able to sell carries for people that just die in the raid and then get the carry anyways. The problem is, and why I think they changed this, is that sure, carries may be a minor thing, not really a big problem. The much bigger problem is that there are quite a few bugged mechanics on the Sandworm that can cause you to die for no mistake of your own. Either an invisible pop-up from the Sandworm, an invisible acid pool, or you simply clipping through the Sandworm's body and falling through the Sandworm's body. And dying in those situations, losing leaderboard progress if the raid doesn't clear Sandworm quickly enough, not getting any rewards, it can be very frustrating. So I can see why they rather opt for this way here and let people have their carries along with that, because it just makes a whole lot more sense and it feels a lot more fair and less frustrating. They probably should have decided on that a little bit sooner, because for most people it's kind of too late, but oh well. There was an issue that legendary fish was supposedly too easy to catch. They are fixing that. They're doing some weird back-end stuff with the fish at the moment. They've been fiddling around with that for ages. 5ad made a video about that, and I've been testing stuff, and basically with multiple patches, things have changed around multiple times, from being able to target fish very easily to not being able to target fish very well at all. So maybe this will make it easier again, or maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. It's just kind of weird. They can't really decide what direction they want to take things in, and we'll just have to find out. They're also introducing the hotkeys for gear set storage once again. This was in the last patch notes, and then it was taken out because apparently they didn't actually put it in yet. I'm hoping that this time it is real and we can actually finally get our hotkeys and switch between gear sets quicker, because it's a very nice feature to have when it actually works. So yeah, fingers crossed. The artisan fishing pole should also actually be usable now. There's some minor season pass fixes that didn't work properly beforehand. One thing that is probably relevant for a few people is that if you didn't earn a gear set slot in the Season 1 season pass, you can buy that one now that was previously locked. The other ones are just fixes to certain interactions. The Hoardmaster boss in the hatchery should now spawn more ads. Apparently he wasn't spawning as much as intended. He's not really a challenge anyway, so I don't think that's going to change much, but we'll see. Maybe he's going to spawn a massive amount suddenly. Also, there were some long load times for certain seasonal content. I'm not sure if this is referring to the season trials actually, or rather the 10-minute loading screens for certain quests, but that should be fixed. The NPC spawned guy also no longer spawns in the world. I had to look that up. Apparently it's just a random NPC that I'm assuming is used for internal testing and somehow popped up in the actual world. In OPR, the amount of personal score points is increased by 40% for contesting outpost control points. People were saying when they made the change to that the value increase just wasn't enough, so I'm glad to see this being increased a bit further. And we got the actual interesting 3v3 arena back for a while, until it goes back to the old boring one in 2 weeks. And then there are a couple other fixes here that I'm not going to read out, just minor stuff. But there is something else in this patch, and that is new skins. Some of these are really hitting the sweet spot between somewhat realistic but also somewhat fantasy, so I want to show you those ones. The first one is Corrosive Oxidiver for 15,000 Marks of Fortune. This one I think in particular looks cool and was what caught my attention. For the same price you can also get the Pelagic Hunter skin, not really my style personally. Kind of a medium armor look to it, but a bit weird honestly. But also 15,000 is the Bulwark of the Fathomless Depth, and I think this one, once again, is a very good looking skin. You can get all three of them as a bundle for 33,000 Marks of Fortune. There are a bunch of new weapons. I'm not going to show you all the individual screenshots because they're all nicely collected here anyways. We have a Greatsword, a Void Gauntlet, a Lifestaff, Hatchet, Bow and Musket. Each of them is 8,500. If you buy the bundle with all of them combined, it's 37,500 instead. There's a new emote called Blow Bubbles, which does exactly what it says. Something almost funny they're doing now is they're not only selling the consumable die packs that they used to do for 3,000 Marks of Fortune each, they also have the individual die packs for 4,500 Marks of Fortune where you get 10 of one color. Which I guess is just in the light of Transmog and us knowing that Transmog can be dyed, but once again I really dislike the system they're using with dyes. And that is all for the skins. Overall, still a few things that we need to test here to see if they actually worked out well. I will do that in the upcoming days, and I'll talk about it here, so if you'd like to see that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. Also, if you're interested in more parts of the Sandworm Guide, or my early review of Palia, which I'm finally allowed to release today/tomorrow, depending on where you are. If you'd like to support me further and get early trading tips, then consider supporting me on Patreon. Thanks to all of the people you can see here who already do exactly that, and thank you for watching. Deep Sloth, out.